If you have just one person on payroll, these federal laws apply to you. And we're not going to spend too much time on these, but just so you are generally familiar with them, the Fair Labor Standards Act, that is what determines minimum wage. That says that anybody who works over 40 hours gets paid time and a half, and it defines the employee classifications, the exempt or the not exempt. Some of you also may be familiar with hourly or salary. And we work with some small business owners who say, you know what, I just pay everyone as exempt or salaried employees because it is so hard to track hours. You know, they're here, there, and everywhere. Or they'll say, well, some weeks they work 20 hours a week, and some weeks it's 60 hours. So I don't want to have to pay overtime. There are specific job requirements for an employee to be deemed as exempt from overtime, according to federal law. And there's also a minimum wage requirement. If you are found guilty of having somebody paying them salary when they should have been paid on an hourly basis, you may be responsible for all of that overtime that you should have paid them in years past, plus fines. So I just bring that up because that is something that we see a lot, and we don't want you to get caught up in that. The National Labor Relations Act also applies to everyone, and that protects employees and employers from unfair labor practices. The Uniform Service Employment Reemployment Rights Act, that essentially is saying that anyone who is deployed, any member of our military service, when he or she returns home, they have the right to the same job in your company or a very similar job as to that which they left, including pay. So they can come back whole, so to speak, when they return from their deployment. The Notice of Exchange and Subsidies. This is the Affordable Care Act, and insurance is available to all Americans through the American Affordable Care Act, but some companies have the opportunity to subsidize that care, and the federal government provides very specific, albeit a little complicated, guidelines for that. So if you're not familiar with that, if you don't offer health care to your full-time employees, I would encourage you to either call us or to even Google this and to see what the expectations are for you as a small business. When an American goes for the Affordable Care Act, they are asked, who is your employer? And there is research then that is done. And if you are found to have 50 employees who work an average of 30 hours a week, you are responsible for providing some subsidies for that health care. The Immigration Reform and Control Act, that is essentially your responsibility as an employer to have documentation to prove every employee has a right to work in the United States. This is where our I-9 documentation comes from. And last, the Employee Polygraph Protection Act is just what it says. For most employers, it is illegal to use a polygraph test for employment or during employment. And if you are able to do that, you can only use that information in very specific circumstances. So that's a lot, and hopefully you were familiar with at least most of those. And